Hey everyone, let's jump right into this study guide. If you're a civil services aspirant, you know how crucial it is to master the complexities of agricultural pricing policies. Whether you're gearing up for prelims or hunting for that analytical edge for your mains essays, understanding how farm support actually works in India is, well, it's absolutely vital. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the policies that literally form the bedrock of India's agricultural economy. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the basics of price support, calculate production costs, compare MSP and FRP, unpack the legal guarantee debate, look at the fiscal and environmental impacts, and finally, explore some policy alternatives and solutions. All right, Section 1, Basics of Price Support. Let's get our core definitions locked down. Let's start with the minimum support price, or MSP. The government fixes this floor price based on recommendations from the CACP, that's the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, and it covers 22 mandated crops. When you're evaluating these policies for your exams, keep in mind that MSP is basically a market anchor. It's a safety net, right? It protects farmers from those crazy price crashes when there's a bumper crop. But here is the kicker. There's no statutory backing here. The government isn't legally bound to enforce it. Now contrast that with sugarcane, which is a totally unique beast, governed by the Fair and Remunerative Price, or FRP. This one is fixed by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. And unlike MSP, FRP comes with a strict legal obligation under the Sugarcane Control Order. Sugar mills absolutely must legally pay this price to the farmers. It's a completely different framework, and honestly, mixing the two up is a super common pitfall, so make sure you've got that distinction clear. Moving on to Section 2. Calculating agricultural production costs. Let's break down A2, A2 plus FL, and C2. Think of this A2 cost as your absolute foundational baseline. We're talking about the direct, paid-out expenses a farmer literally hands over to grow a crop. Out-of-pocket cash and kind expenditures, seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, paying hired labor, fuel for the tractor, and even the rent for leased-in land. It is the ground floor of agricultural economics. Next up, we add FL, or family labor. You know, in Indian agriculture, family members are constantly working on the farm, usually without a formal wage. So A2 plus FL calculates the imputed value of that unpaid labor and tacks it onto our baseline. And you definitely need to remember this. A2 plus FL is the exact formula the government currently uses to set the MSP. They ensure a minimum 50% margin over this specific number. Finally, we get to the comprehensive C2 cost. To get this, you take that last formula and add the estimated rental value of owned land plus the interest on fixed capital. This is a much broader economic assessment because it factors in opportunity costs. Now, the CAAP uses C2 mainly as a benchmark reference, but this higher figure, this is exactly what farmers are heavily demanding today, which directly echoes the famous recommendations of the Swaminathan Commission. Okay, Section 3, comparing MSP and FRP. Let's map out these differences side by side. When you lay it out like this, the contrasts are pretty stark. With MSP, your primary buyers are government agencies like the Food Corporation of India. But with FRP, it's the private sugar mills. And remember that legal guarantee we talked about? MSP doesn't have one, and there's no specified penalty for non-payment. But FRP is legally backed. If a sugar mill doesn't clear its FRP dues within 14 days, cane commissioners can literally attach the mill's properties to get that money back. Plus, while MSP looks at production costs and market trends, FRP is strictly based on the sugar recovery percentage from the cane itself. That brings us to Section 4, the legal guarantee debate. Let's objectively weigh the pros and cons of making MSP a law. Now, this is a massive balancing act. On one hand, proponents argue that a legal guarantee gives farmers essential financial security against crazy weather and market volatility. It would inject much-needed capital right into the rural economy to cure ongoing distress. Plus, if done right, it could actually incentivize farmers to grow less water-intensive crops. But on the flip side, opponents argue it would slap a massive fiscal burden on the government. It could severely distort open markets by making the state the de facto buyer, and it risks violating World Trade Organization subsidy rules, which could really hurt India's growing farm export market. All right, Section 5, Fiscal and Environmental Impacts. What is the real-world cost of all this procurement? Well, according to government estimates, to physically procure all 23 mandated crops nationwide at the minimum support price would cost an unbelievable 17 lakh crore rupees. That's roughly 5 trillion rupees. It's a staggering fiscal burden, and it really highlights the massive logistical and financial limits of just trying to buy up all the marketable surplus to guarantee a price.
And shifting gears to the ecological footprint, get this. It takes an astonishing 3,000 to 3,500 liters of water to produce just 1 single kilogram of paddy. When we talk about long-term sustainability, this is the exact metric that should make everyone pause. You see, the current procurement focus actually unintentionally incentivizes a huge ecological imbalance. Because the government's buying apparatus is mostly geared toward wheat and rice, farmers rationally choose to grow those exact crops because they know they'll get paid. But the unintended consequence? We're seeing severe groundwater depletion and alarming soil degradation, especially in traditional breadbasket states like Punjab and Haryana.
However, there is a flip side. If a legally guaranteed MSP successfully encouraged crop diversification away from paddy, say toward pulses or oilseeds, it could potentially reduce agricultural electricity use by a massive 60%. So it really goes to show how pricing policy, if it's structured cleverly, could actually be a super powerful tool for environmental conservation.
Finally, Section 6, Policy Alternatives and Solutions. What are our options beyond just physically buying everything? Well, there are a few ways to shift toward a better market efficiency without the logistical nightmare of blanket physical procurement. First, there are price deficiency payments. This is where the government pays farmers the difference between the market rate and the MSP without ever physically touching the grain. States like Madhya Pradesh and Haryana have already tested this out. Then you have direct income support, like PM Kisan, which just gives direct financial aid without distorting crop prices at all. You could also use market intervention schemes for perishable goods. And of course, upgrading infrastructure. Investing in modern mandis and cold storage naturally empowers farmers to score better prices on the open market.
So, as you prep for your exams, I want to leave you with this classic essay question to ponder. How on earth do we solve the ultimate agrarian balancing act? How can India protect the very people who feed the nation without bankrupting the exchequer or draining our water tables dry? Understanding the nuances of A2, C2, MSP, and FRP is your first major step toward answering that defining question. Keep analyzing, keep studying, and I'll see you in the next explainer.